Welcome to Michael Potts Formula One. Everything Formula One, but from a photographer's point of view. The Formula One summer break is when teams and drivers are forced to down tools and catch up on all those missing margaritas. For us, it's an opportunity to have a deep dive into how the teams have performed so far in 2022. In this series of vlogs, I'll be looking at each of the Formula One teams, comparing how the drivers have performed against each other, what they've achieved so far in 2022. I'll also show you some of my favorite photographs of the season so far. If you've enjoyed this, please do like and subscribe. It really helps me to grow the channel. Today, we're looking at the 9th place team on the grid, Aston Martin. This is a bit of a step back for the team. Last year, they were 7th. They had scored a podium in Baku, and they could have scored a podium in Hungary had the car not been disqualified. This team is transforming from a small, low-budget team to one that is hopefully going to be a title contender in a few years' time. In that transformation, there's a lot of growing pains, and they're not delivering a car that matches their expectations. Even though the team is going through a difficult period, their prospects for the future do look very good, with a lot of financial support. Lance Stroll versus Sebastian Vettel versus Nico Hulkenberg. This is a little bit more complex because Nico drove for the team for the first 2 races of the year when Sebastian Vettel had COVID. Let's start with Nico versus Lance. This is the first 2 races of the year. In one, Nico was faster, and in the other, Lance. So they both won all on qualifying and races. Neither of them scored a point, so there's not much to choose between the 2 drivers. The real comparison is between Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel. In the 11 races they competed together, Sebastian is ahead. He leads qualifying 8-2. Lance didn't set a time in Australia. They split 1 all on the sprint races, and in the 10 races they both finished. Sebastian leads that 6-4. Vettel has scored 16 points to Lance's 4. At the start of the season, Nico was a last-minute replacement for Sebastian Vettel when he was diagnosed with COVID. He hadn't raced since 2020. He hadn't been part of any of the practices, so jumping into a completely new car at the start of the season and getting the results he did was actually a great achievement. My shot of Nico is a slow shutter speed shot at turn 2 in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Shooting with an extremely slow shutter speed, the car dissolves under the lights. It creates these beautiful lines that really give you the sense of speed, of movement. I particularly like how the green of the Aston Martin pops under the lights. It's a lighter green to last year and it looks really, really good. Hulkenberg is only 34. And although his name does get mentioned as a possible 2023 driver, his Formula One days are probably behind him. He's recently got married and he has a small child, and he looks very content with life outside Formula One. Lance is in his 6th season in Formula One. He currently races for the team which his father Lawrence built around him. The Canadian billionaire initially made his money in fashion. He was heavily involved in some iconic brands such as Michael Kors, Tommy Hilfiger, Ralph Lauren, and Pierre Cardin. A few years ago, he bought the struggling Force India team, rebranded it as Racing Point, and brought his son over from Williams. After forming a consortium to buy 16.7% of Aston Martin, he rebranded the team under that name, instantly tapping into the luxury brand's sporting heritage. This might be sounding more of a review of Lawrence than Lance, but there's a reason for that. If truth be told, Lance is only in Formula One because of his father. In his 6 seasons, he's had a few exceptional races, often in the wet, often in very, very tricky conditions. He has managed to score 3 podiums, and he's the 2nd youngest driver in the history of Formula One. This year, he's really struggled, and he's only managed to get 10th place on 4 occasions. My shot of Lance is when he crashed in Monaco. Coming through the swimming pool complex, he misjudged the corner and hit the barrier. It was a bit hairy as I was shooting through the same barrier, and it was quite unsettling seeing a car crash in front of you. It wasn't a bad crash, he was able to keep driving and he managed to get the car back to the pits. In the second half of the year, Lance does need some convincing results. There'll be no doubt that he'll be driving for the team in 2023, given all of his father's investment. However, the team is growing rapidly, and there's a lot of new investors involved. There'll come a point when they'll expect more from that 2nd seat. In 6 seasons, he's only managed to outscore his teammate on 1 occasion, and his results this year have been very underwhelming. Even though the 4 times world champion has outscored his teammates so far this season, it hasn't been a great year for Seb. Last year in the Aston Martin, he was fighting for race wins. However, this year, his best result is 6th place in Baku. He's only scored points on 5 occasions. And even worse, he's been knocked out in Q1 on 6 occasions. He's only made it to Q3 3 times. During winter testing, Sebastian wore a no-war helmet based on the Ukrainian flag. The helmet was a simple design but made a powerful statement. Throughout his career, he's often had amazing one-off designed helmets. At one stage, it felt like he had a different one at every race. This prompted Formula One to ban one-off helmets. They said it confused the fans and made it hard for them to identify who was the drivers. Luckily, they've seen sense and they've relaxed this rule. Sebastian is now using his helmet design as a powerful piece of social commentary. This can be seen in his one-off designs for Save the Bees and Let the Children Play. Sebastian is going to the final few races of his Formula One career after announcing his retirement in Hungary. He leaves the sport with some significant accomplishments. 4 drivers' world titles, 53 wins, that's the 3rd most of all time, 122 podiums, over 3,000 points, 57 pole positions, and 38 fastest laps. He's been on the podium for every team he's raced for, and he's developing a reputation as one of the sport's moral leaders, frequently speaking out on climate change and human rights and other things that he's very passionate about. For a Formula One driver, he's lived a fairly private life. We'd never see his wife or family at the races. He hasn't been active on social media until earlier this year, where he joined Instagram just to announce his retirement. Thank you for watching my review of the Aston Martin team, midway through the 2022 season. What do you think of the prospects of the team for the remainder of the year? Do you think Vettel has checked out, or will be giving his all in every single race? Can Lance Stroll pull a surprise performance out of the bag? Let me know in the comments below. Until tomorrow, thank you very much.